Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. The UN Human Rights Council has said it is deeply concerned about India's recent human rights violations against Kashmiris. Addressing the Council's general session in Geneva, High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet told India to end the lockdown in occupied Kashmir. She said Kashmiris should be consulted and engaged in any decision-making processes that impact their future. The High Commissioner told India to prevent deportation or detention of Kashmiris and ensure people are protected from statelessness. Bachelet also expressed concern over the detention of local political leaders and activists in the Indian-occupied valley. She said India's citizenship bill in the state of northeastern Assam has created greater uncertainty and anxiety for 1.9 million people. Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi will also address the session to present his country's stance on various regional and international issues. The International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is moving towards renouncing the 2015 nuclear deal. IAEA has confirmed this after its chief, Colonel Faroutra, visited Tehran to check Iran's nuclear program's transparency. The UN's nuclear watchdog said installation of advanced centrifuges to produce enriched uranium will lead to increased production. IAEA says Iran will be in breach of the agreement with the major powers if it exceeds uranium enrichment. Meanwhile, Iran says the EU has failed to act on their promises within the 2015 pact. But Tehran says the decision can be reversed if all the parties fulfill their commitments. 18 pro-Iran fighters have been killed in an airstrike in eastern Syria's Al-Bukamal region. London-based War Monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, says it is not clear who carried out the raids. The airstrikes targeted Syria's remote eastern desert. Control of the area is split between US-backed Kurdish fighters and groups aligned with Damascus, backed by Iran and Russia. More than 300,000 people have been killed in the Syrian civil war since 2011. 29 people have been killed in two separate attacks in northern Burkina Faso. Government spokesman Ramiz Fulgan says the attacks were a bid to sabotage security efforts in the region. Fulgan said 15 were killed after a van hit an improvised explosive device in the Barcelona area. He said 14 others were killed in another attack on a food convoy. The government officials say military reinforcements have been deployed in the area to prevent more attacks. Lebanon's Hezbollah claims it has downed an Israeli drone outside the southern town of Ramia. This is the second time an Israeli UAV has crossed over into Lebanon in a week. Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV said the drone shot down by their forces is now in their possession. Last week, Tel Aviv's military drones targeted Hezbollah's offices in Beirut. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah had warned of counter-attacks deep inside Israeli territory if it violated Lebanese airspace again. The US has renewed its call for an early resumption of the stalled nuclear talks with North Korea. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said President Donald Trump will be very disappointed if North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un does not resume the dialogue. In an interview, Pompeo also hinted at working-level talks between Washington and Pyongyang restarting soon. Pompeo said Kim has not yet violated his commitment to Trump regarding weapon testing. But he said Trump will not be thrilled if Kim's missile tests violate agreements made in earlier meetings. Ireland says there would be a no-deal Brexit if there is no backstop to prevent a hard border on the island. Irish President Leo Varadkar was speaking in Dublin alongside British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Meanwhile, Johnson said a breakthrough on the Irish backstop is unlikely. Varadkar said Ireland prefers to have Brexit resolved by October, but will consider a delay if there is a good reason. Speaking in Dublin, Johnson said he is undaunted by Parliament's attempts to block a no-deal exit. He said there is still time to debate the matter in the Parliament and deliver Brexit. Johnson will try to save his job and his hardline Brexit strategy in the UK Parliament today. His bid to break the deadlock through a snap election is also facing an almost certain second successive defeat. President Vladimir Putin's party has won a majority in the elections in Moscow. Election officials say United Russia won 24 seats out of the City Duma's 45. The Communist Party claimed 14 seats, while the center-left Just Russia took 4 seats. The election came into international limelight after opposition candidates were barred from the polls. This sparked mass protests. Putin's United Russia lost 16 seats from the 40 it previously held. Central Election Commission Chairwoman Alla Pamfilova says over 90% of the registered voters cast their ballot. State communications watchdog Roskomnadzor has accused tech giants Google and Facebook of election meddling. Roskomnadzor says US tech giants allowed political advertisements during Sunday's polls. It said they had been asked to ban such publicity. Russia and France have called for combined efforts from all the signatories to save the Iran nuclear deal. Earlier, Tehran said it was activating nuclear centrifuges, taking a third step away from the accord. The Kremlin said the French and the Russian presidents discussed the nuclear pact over the phone. It said Macron and Putin exchanged information about steps they will take on that track. The two presidents also assessed Saturday's prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. They expressed hope for the normalization of Russian-Ukrainian relations. The Kremlin said both the heads of the states have agreed to continue contacts. Foreign and defense ministers of the two countries will meet today in the Security Cooperation Council. The fourth round of the Russian-US counter-terrorism consultations will be held in Vienna today. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Oleg Syromolotov and US Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan will take part in the talks. Sullivan says he will use the platform to facilitate information sharing to the US can be protected from the terror attacks. Syromolotov said both the parties will sum up results and outline the prospects. He said terrorist migration, the activities of IS in Afghanistan, and terror financing top the agenda. Syromolotov said counterterrorism cooperation builds the confidence necessary for progress in bilateral relations. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has condemned xenophobic attacks in Johannesburg that claimed 2 lives. The death toll in riots increased to 10 after the latest killings. 1 person was stabbed and another shot dead by a large group of armed attackers. Riot police fired stun grenades and rubber bullets to disperse the crowds, targeting shops. Many shops were set ablaze in the Malvern district. The attack started last week after lorry drivers staged a strike to protest against the employment of foreigners. Much like the on-ground situation in Gaza, Palestinian democracy tells a story of isolation. Elections haven't been held in the Palestinian territories since 2006. More on this report.
When Israelis vote next week for their 6th general election, it will be more than 13 years for Palestinians to have had the same rights. Unemployment is at 30% as factional rivalries, infighting and Israeli restrictions persist. After a 2007 split, 2 governments effectively rule separate territories. President Mahmoud Abbas leads the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority and Hamas controls Gaza. A decade of reconciliation talks have brought no results.
It's all the same thing, whether right or left. It's all the same. We want someone who will help the people, whether left or right. We welcome anyone who is good and wants to help.
Following the 2004 death of longtime Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, a push was made to rejuvenate democracy. In 2005, Abbas Fatah won presidential elections, but a year later, Hamas shocked the world by beating him in parliamentary polls. Palestinian politics has been static since, with the two tightening their grips on respective territories.
The Palestinian people will be affected either way, and the result will be negative on all aspects, because there is no progress in establishing peace. There is no land left because of increase in settlements, and we have no rights. Whomever the winner in both cases, the Palestinian people will pay a high price.
Israel maintains a crippling blockade of Gaza, and while it prepares for its general elections, there is very little hope for Palestinians being able to choose their own rulers.
French authorities say this year's severe heat wave killed 1,500 people. Health Minister Agnès Buzyn said the death toll was 91% higher than the average calculated over the years. But Buzyn said Paris was able to cut mortality rates by a factor of 10 due to preventive measures. Record-breaking heat hit France and other parts of Europe from June the 24th to July the 27th this year. During the spell, France recorded its highest ever recorded temperature of 46 degrees Celsius. 4 people are missing after a cargo vessel overturned off the coast of Georgia. The U.S. Coast Guard have rescued 20 crew members. The cargo ship was disabled in the St. Simons Sound after a fire erupted aboard the cargo ship. The company and South Korea's foreign ministry said rescue teams were searching for 4 crew members believed to be inside the engine room. The ship was due to arrive in Baltimore today. In the U.S., the first responders to the 9/11 attacks were hailed as national heroes during the immediate aftermath of the terrorist incident. But today, they are fighting for their lives after developing cancer and other cardiovascular diseases in the line of duty. More in this report.
As the 18th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks approaches, New York continues to count the number of people who have developed cancer or other serious illness. The attacks at Twin Towers released unprecedented amounts of carcinogenic chemicals into the air. Firefighters and volunteers who helped with the month-long cleanup were the first to be affected.
And it was determined that because I was down here and I had so much exposure to it, my cancer was most likely related to 9/11. And then also developed in my lungs. Never smoked, never did anything. But it spread so rapidly also.
In recent years, the World Trade Center Health Program has diagnosed almost 10,000 with cancer, and at the end of June this year, 21,000 people not considered first responders were also in the program. Almost 4,000 were diagnosed with cancer. Health experts note a clear correlation between the two events.
There's never been an attack comparable to September 11th, and there's never been a chemical exposure comparable to September 11th. So nobody could predict exactly what would happen, where you take billions of tons of building material that cooked together for 99 days and emitted into the air downtown.
This cancer rate is expected to increase further. This is why President Donald Trump has signed a bill extending the compensation deadline to next year. The average compensation per patient is $240,000 or $682,000 for a deceased person.
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus. Welcome back. Bolivia's ambitious plans to expand its agriculture are facing staunch criticism from the West. President Evo Morales has been accused of burning down the forests for monetary gains. More in this report.
Fires are raging in Bolivia, burning through the Chicoitano dry forest in the country's southern Santa Cruz region. Experts say the fires are largely the result of logging to convert forests into farmland. President Evo Morales is promoting land farming in a bid to boost the country's economy.
We are growing economically. I realize I am not an expert, but I have realized that a country without economic growth is invisible in international summits of presidents, in meetings with American business, in Latin America and the world.
Critics link the fires to laws Morales has passed, encouraging farmers and ranchers to settle in forested areas in recent years. Output despite a drought. That includes permission this year to use slash and burn methods to ramp up output despite a drought. Experts say the charm of corporate benefits have corrupted decision makers.
Corporate interests are imposing their ideals on a country that is fighting for the poor. These types of policies do not use a lot of manual labor. They are industrialized and are also linked to transgenics. The intensive use of the earth goes against the policy of defending Mother Earth, against the policy of supporting behavior that is friendly when it comes to natural resources.
Bolivia's fires have swept over 2.1 million hectares of land, burning more than 700,000 hectares of forest in protected reserves. The government has rejected allegations it is fueling the fire, dubbing it a lie to destabilize growth.
In Madagascar, Father Pedro, considered an arm of God by the locals, has established a town on a landfill site. Akamasau offers home, education, meals, and above all, hope to an otherwise impoverished community. More in this report.
A mountain of garbage that became an oasis of hope. That's how one resident of Akamasau describes the dump site. This pile of rubbish in Antananarivo was home to hundreds of families making a living sifting through the debris for scraps to sell.
It's hard work because it takes a lot of time to find something. Per day, I earn 40 cents for a bucket of coal, 50 cents for a basket of bones. I often earn 40 cents for aluminium bottles.
For the last 30 years, Humanitarian Association Akamasau has been building villages like these to help the poor in Madagascar's capital. This woman can now send her children to school and put a roof over their heads. The town of Akamasau was founded by 71-year-old Father Pedro Opeka. Born in Buenos Aires, he wanted to be a professional football player, but instead found his calling in helping Madagascar's downtrodden.
We humanized this garbage. We humanized it because if it had not been for our school, all the work that Amakasoa did here, it would have been a place of violence and of total anarchy. Today, they are poor, but virtuous. There is a dignity here. This dignity is priceless.
Leva believes he found dignity thanks to Father Pedro. He was 6 years old and searching for scraps on the dump with his parents when he met the priest. He was schooled thanks to the Akamasau Association and is now a maths teacher.
For me, Father Pedro is the hand of God that touched me directly. When he says something, he does it. I've seen it for a long time.
For many here, Father Pedro is the embodiment of Christianity. His work and his attitude has a daily and uplifting impact on their lives.
Changing climate hastened by human actions has brought with it a number of challenges for the environment. Of these, the ailing Grand Barrier Reef has alarmed the world of scientists and become the focal point for most environmental organizations. But the days of worry might be ending soon. How? More in this report.
The giant pumice emerging from an underwater volcano eruption near North Tonga is heading towards Australia. It initially formed a floating raft spanning 150 square kilometers. That's roughly the size of 20,000 football fields.
If we were standing on the beach, for example, looking at this pumice, it would go to the horizon. That's far denser. Yep.
The pumice poses no threat to people or the coastline here, but each piece that survives the journey will make its way to the reef. It will serve as a vehicle for organisms' growth. This is a positive development as Australia's government downgraded the health of the reef, which had lost half of its coral.
billions and millions of individuals in at once to be able to find a new home, add to the existing populations that are here that have suffered over the last few years through bleaching, cyclones in particular, just giving that extra boost of new numbers to help replenish and restore the reef.
As the pumice raft continues to break, chances of it being dispersed along the Great Barrier Reef increase. While it isn't a cure, restocking some of the lost coral could help the reef to better cope with the threats it faces.
The first beauty pageant for people with albinism was held in Malawi. The winners of the pageant were crowned by the country's First Lady. More in this report.
It's hard living with albinism anywhere in the world, but especially in Africa. Now, Malawi has taken a great step to boost the confidence of people living with the condition. To encourage the people living with albinism to live fuller lives, Malawi took a great step ahead by holding a beauty pageant in the country's capital. People from different walks of life attended the event with enthusiasm. The pageant winners were awarded a prize of $1,350 and a laptop. The First Lady of Malawi, Chikondi Kanjanza, crowned the winner.
Very excited. I didn't really expect to be the first ever Miss Albinism in Malawi. What I'm going to do now, firstly, is to bring awareness to communities, especially the local communities that hold negative attitudes, myths and misconceptions about persons with albinism.
Mr. Albinism in Malawi also expressed his joy.
There were a lot of handsome boys, a lot of intelligent boys, maybe more than me, but I've won the main prize. So I feel so excited, so overwhelmed.
The organizer is sure that the winner will increase awareness about living with albinism.
At the end of the day, these people are going to take oath of office, and they are going to make sure that they play ambassadorial duties in making sure that they take issues of albinism even beyond the country.
UN Resident Coordinator in Malawi, Maria Jose Torres, believes all of them are people with talent and beauty.
Really acknowledge that before the census we thought that there were 15,000 people living with albinism in Malawi. Today we know you are 134,000. This is an amazing number of people with talent, with brains, and also with beauty.
The winners of the contest vowed to let the world know that persons with albinism also have to enjoy the human rights as everyone else has.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus News.